Theresa, when you mention these things, we think also of what's going on in our nation, the divisiveness, the bitterness, there's rage, there's anger about so many social issues. When movements in our country or political parties, political movements realize that there are those, like for example, now our president, very, very pro-life. The Republican Party stands for protecting the unborn child, pushing back against legal abortion. And then, of course, we see the courts moving in a pro-life direction. So for a person who is experiencing these kinds of reactions like you're describing, that their own abortion has traumatized them, and as a reaction, they're going to fight anybody who's going to, first of all, even mention this, or they see. Well, let me ask the question this way: they see these movements in our society that, to their way of thinking, are going to take away the right to an abortion. Now, it's one thing to say, you know what, let's have a rational, peaceful discussion about this. Let's educate people about the facts of abortion. Let's talk it through. Let's see if we can come to some solution. But if people are so wounded by the tens of millions, can that explain, at least to some extent, why we see the political divide in our country become so combative, bitter, and even irrational?
I think it does. I think it's all about the trauma. And then you look at the causes, because I said you act it out. You find another way to tell your story. You find something else to get upset about, where, even like the immigration issue, where there's just this horror and outrage that you're letting children die on the border. And of course, we should all be concerned about any life in danger. But there's all this focus on that, completely negating all the children who are being denied life, who aren't
in the womb,
given life, who, and we talk about like just making this country a place of welcome for the world, for anybody. What about the babies trying to get in,
Or gun violence.
Yeah,
right.
So you take an issue that's horrible, and these are all important issues. I don't
right, exactly, they are.
It's not like, they're all important issues, but when you get so indignant about, the gun violence and all the children being slaughtered in school, and these events in the headlines are really important for the culture because they become the thing that people grieve. It's forbidden grief to grieve your own baby. But when there's a school shooting or a national tragedy where children die, then you see the collective grief just come forward.
So you're saying we've got these tens of millions of people who have had abortions. It's forbidden grief, and we'll get into that a little more.
It's not a validated loss. It's like repressed.
It's not validated.
It's also deeply repressed.
Repressed, or impacted is another term that's used. Right?
It's complicated.
Complicated grief. Okay. So in other words, the way I say it is, they're made to feel silly for feeling sad.
Right.
And so they don't tell anybody, hey, I really feel bad about my abortion. And people might look at them and say, what do you mean? You exercised your right to choose. That's great, isn't it? So you're saying then they see these again, important, serious, national tragedies that happen. So now there's an outlet for that repressed abortion-related grief to come out in a more powerful way.
Because like Sandy Hook, that's my child. That could have been my child. And we know this from our end. It's not even a theory of mine, because when these events happen, our hotline is flooded.
The hotline for people that have had abortions.
Yes.
Yeah.
If they're lucky enough to put two and two together, because they find themselves grieving hysterically over a stranger's baby.
And meanwhile, they're really grieving over their own.
Yeah, so that's the part one, is that they can't function. They stop functioning. There's something about that loss that's so close to their kind of buried wound that it even shocks them how they can't pull it together. They didn't even know these kids.
Yes.
Or one child or some tragic, like they didn't know it, but then they identify with the pain of how that feels and the horror and the tragedy of it. And if they're lucky, they'll go to their own pain
and start facing it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I say if they're lucky because there's many things that stop us.
Right.
But you do see the pouring of collective grief. And many people will say that that's what did it to me. That's what opened it up. Because on our retreats, of course, people share why they came, what made them come, and also they share how they used to feel about it.
Yes.
Before it became such an issue.
Before, yeah.
And when I say before it became an issue, because a lot of people do have the ability to submerge it, redirect their focus, justify it, bury it, or act it out. And I wrote extensively about the multiple abortions being a symptom of trauma, because we know that repetition is one of the greatest indicators of trauma. And
repetition, yes.
Yeah, and people will go back and not necessarily, abortion is one way they keep having abortions. 10,
Yeah.
you and I both know people that have had 20.
Yeah, exactly.
And
20 abortions.
until they had healing, that pattern is not interrupted. The healing, we know that 50% of all abortions in this country are repeats.
Repeat, yeah.
So if we engage in healing, it stops the repetition, which is an
Yes.
indicator. And you also say with all the birth control available, and I'm not advocating birth control, but I'm saying people know how not to have a baby, but it's like a compulsive need to finish what you started, and you take the risk again. And that's just with unplanned pregnancy, the multiple abortions, but people take risks in all sorts of ways where they re-experience loss, grief, shame, abandonment, rejection. This would be the traumatic themes that then become the smorgasbord that their life revolves around.
Right.
And that's where people actually lose their choice, because trauma actually dictates our choices. When it's unresolved, unreconciled, and ungrieved, we're bound to see repetition, not necessarily always of like an abortion, but repetition of the emotions that accompany the trauma. So if your abortion's a secret, then you're going to have lots of secret. An eating disorder can be a secret. An affair can be a secret. An addiction can be a secret. And that's where the outlet is of the repressed. It's that I have a secret, so now I have to find a more acceptable secret to keep, because I can't think about that one. So what I'm saying is that the themes get funneled into different forms of dysfunction.
Yes.
And relationships get repeated in trauma bonds. So the relationships can be kind of unhealthy that women enter afterwards or stay with because they feel they deserve mistreatment. They feel they deserve to be punished. Or they only I call it trauma drama junkie, but that means that they only feel passion about somebody that releases all these trauma hormones. Mm-hmm. And that makes them feel alive when you're in crisis. So they go from crisis to crisis to crisis. Never, you know why? Because crisis keeps us distracted. So this is how you can see the trauma drama junkie metaphor, meaning that to be alone or still with my thoughts, or to even be quiet to pray, or to sit in church when you might hear God speaking you, we have to be distracted. And you can see this with the use of constant stimulation of the headphone and, all the even the drama and the addiction of constant texting to friends. All of this keeps everybody from feeling.
Yes.
And, when people come on the retreat, we ask that they would put the cell phones away, which is it's such a hard thing, but we say you deserve to take time
some
to
space,
focus and to feel. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't feel, I don't think you can heal.
Right.
And feeling involves grieving. And grieving sounds like a terrible activity, but grieving is freedom. Because you release that from the body. Remember I said that all the trauma's in the body. When you don't find a space or a way to get rid of that, it makes you sick.
Yes.
It causes autoimmune illnesses, pain syndromes, in-time heart disease, cancer related to the stress. So for health reasons alone, people, no matter what their trauma is, should step aside, because it's a wonderful investment that you can make in yourself for your health. We also know that when we do that, that our spiritual health, really rises.
Yes.
And so does our resilience, because resilience builds when we learn how to face things and be present to that kind of pain, which is why I think that our ministers are so extraordinary, that many of them have gone through some trauma, and they're not afraid of the grief, because if you haven't done your own grief work, you can't stand to hear someone's story like that.
No, that's right.
You feel afraid of it. It feels threatening, and it's like, I got to shut it down. Oh, you're out of control. Oh,
Right.
Let's give you some drugs to shut up about this, because we don't really want to hear what you have to say, because it's threatening.
It's threatening to them.
And I really mean that. Like, it's not people being difficult. There's a physiological survivor response going on.
That's why with the Rachel's Vineyard ministers, you don't just go to help on a Rachel's Vineyard retreat. You go through the retreat yourself.
We don't allow anyone to help.
It's not allowed. That's
Even
right.
if they're not post-aborted. Everybody's got something.
We all have something to grieve.
That's
yeah,
the truth.
we all have something to grieve. So to wrap up this part of the discussion, this is we're taking here a fascinating journey here of looking at the trauma of abortion and wide societal impacts as well as personal impacts. I want to bring it around full circle for a moment in this sense. Whether it's an individual having a one-on-one conversation and a person blows up at them when the word abortion comes up, or storms out of the room like you experienced in that group of the eating disorders, or just shuts down and we're not going to talk about this, or whether it's the people going crazy at the confirmation of a Supreme Court justice because they think Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned. We are seeing the pain coming forward from abortion that people have not learned how to face and how to grieve. With that in mind, as you've explained in depth, on a personal basis, because so many of our viewers deal with this, what should they say when someone around them, either because of something that they said or that someone else said, or maybe they pick up the newspaper and there's abortion in the headlines and they have this traumatic reaction? What do you recommend people say to somebody to help them along in dealing with this terrible burden of pain?
Such a good question, because it is sensitive and nobody wants to hurt somebody that they love. And when we do see it as an issue of pain, I think it gives everyone more compassion if you can understand it. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're like those crazy,
Yeah,
and you don't really understand the delicate thing they're protecting inside.
Right.
So I think I remember hearing say, what do we say to people? Mm-hmm. It's really being present to listen. That presence can happen without a lot of words.
Right.
But acknowledging that it's a real tough thing. And if you know the person and you love the person, you can say that, I know that was so hard for you. If you ever want to talk about it, I'm here for you.
You acknowledge it was hard.
You acknowledge that it was hard. You acknowledge that I love you.
Yes.
No matter what has happened that is difficult for you or has been challenging, that you deserve to heal from this. A lot of people like to offer Rachel's Vineyard as a gift for Mother's Day, at Christmas, we love you. We see how you've changed since this happened, and we miss the old you, and that you deserve to heal. And whatever we can do to support you in that journey. If you want to go by yourself, we're going to pay. If you want me to go with you, I'm there. I'm your girl. I'm your guy. Mm-hmm. And I think that message of you deserve to heal. You are such a good person. And another thing, when people talk about this, the immediate thing that some people feel is, if they're not going to yell, they just feel guilt, they feel shame, and many times they're ready to just bawl, cry. But they don't want to fall apart in front of somebody, so they kind of like stiff it up, and then they go cry alone.
And then when they're alone.
Yeah. And this is the problem of abortion, that for so many women it happens in secret, in isolation, and they're alone. And they never knew who or how to ask for help to keep the baby.
Yes.
So they thought, my mom's going to kill me, my dad will be ashamed, I'm going to get kicked out of school, or I can't be in the military because I don't let pregnant women. So whatever it is, they didn't know how to advocate for themselves. So I think it's really important in the healing that they see that you can ask for help. And for that reason, we invite a lot of women to suggest to their husband, even if it's not the father of the aborted child, to come on the retreat, because she's learned to be alone. She thinks that this is a part of her life that he can't share, that he can't understand. So like in the retreats, they'll spiritually adopt the baby. This is part of our family. You want to pray for that child, I'm praying with him for you, with you.
Right.
So to me, it dismantles the secrecy and ends the isolation, which is so critical. So to know that someone is there, you might not be ready today, but I love you so much. And if you ever want to talk about this, I'm here. I just want to listen. I don't judge you. I don't, condemn you.
Right.
I just want to be here for you.
Exactly.
It's a simple message.
Exactly.
Friends don't let friends have abortion.
Right.
Friends don't let friends drive drunk.
Right.
It's kind of like that kind of thing. And you don't want to let people try to figure this out and heal alone, because I don't think it works.
No.
I don't think it works.
That's one of the great things about Rachel's Vineyard, as we'll explore more, is this. It's not. We don't get wounded in isolation. We don't heal in isolation. This isolation is what the abortion movement pushes, and what we push in healing and in the Christian worldview is community. God loves and creates and saves us in community, and Rachel's Vineyard heals in community. We'll delve more into that, but thanks for these insights. We try to get the priests to take the very same approach that at the beginning of any preaching on abortion, which of course we urge them to do regularly, that the message of healing leads the way. That they make it clear, we are on your side, we are not judging or condemning you, that's not why we're here. And then once people know that the preacher is on their side, then they're open and ready to hear the rest of the message too.
Sure, yeah, but nobody wants to be lectured to either, because the thing, I know that there's a bit of an outrage because people haven't walked in their shoes. They don't know what all the forces were that young person or married woman or whoever it was dealing with at the time that they felt that I have to do this. And a lot of women can feel very incensed that anybody would tell them what to do. And we both know that we really don't have control over the body when there's been histories of abuse.
Right.
And that was sort of a slogan that came out of all the abuse that was going on, is that my body, my choice. I'm not going to let anybody, get inside me. But they weren't going back to stop the abusers. They were taking it all inside as a violence that invaded their own psychological and physical integrity to solve a much bigger problem that's finally coming to light these days, the amount of abuse going on. But you can really see where when people feel that there's no advocacy, that the only thing they can do is how do I say this right? They feel that taking control is giving them control.
Yes.
But for many people, as we hear, that's what started their problems.
Exactly.
They thought it would fix it, and it did nothing but, wreak havoc in their lives for many, many years.
Well, thanks for these insights. We'll continue our conversation, and thank you, brothers and sisters, for paying us giving us the privilege of speaking with you about these things. We've been talking with Dr. Theresa Burke, founder of Rachel's Vineyard, and we'll be back with more. Stay with us.